In this lesson, I'm going to run you through a couple of quick tools that I use for texture mapping. Your vehicles, if you don't plan on putting them in a game engine, you will be able to go ahead and use some of the shaders from MetalRay to render out your vehicle. But I highly recommend that you do all that you can to set up your models now, so that you have reference points later. So when you're texture mapping your vehicle or your character in Maya, there are really great tools to use for that. I'll just show you what my workflow is, and you can glean what you like from that. Of course, this isn't ready for texture mapping, but we're going to go ahead and get this tutorial done for you so you can move ahead. So what I'm going to do is come down here to split window so that we can look at our model while we're working here. And under panels, I'm going to turn on, again, panels down here. I'm going to bring up the UV texture editor, and as you can see, I get a jumble because nothing has been actually mapped. Now for a vehicle such as this, or an organic character, you can go in and use the auto unwrapping tools that Maya has available. And there are other options as well, but I tend to start there and see what it comes up with, and if that's not suitable for my texture mapping needs, I'll go back and use some of the other projection systems that they have in place. So what I'm going to do first is create my, I'll bring up the Hypershade and create my shader networks. So under render editors, I'm going to bring up my Hypershade. Just thinking about it, there we go. Right up here I'm going to create a new shading network. And I have a blend here. I can change that to Phong if I like, for an appearance that's more like a highly reflective surface that we're doing for the vehicle. Or use it to blend is a nice place to start for skin textures. But then I'll come in here and I'll just change my colors. So I'll make this one red. And as I go, I'm going to go ahead and name these. I'll name this one the Viper Body. Okay, and then I can just get in here and duplicate these shading networks. And I tend to duplicate several at a time. And each one I'm going to name as I go. Viper door. Okay, and I'm going to change the colors so that I can easily see this. When I go in, this one is going to be Viper windows. Okay, and I'm going to change that one to maybe something that's looks kind of like shaded windows. Alright, so you get the idea. And then what I'm going to do is select my parts and right click on the shading network and assign material to selection. So you can see I've got a nice red paint job on the body again. I'll select the door, and the door is going to be blue for now. And of course the windows, just grab both of them here. Alright, right click. Alright, so we have different parts of our model assigned to different shading networks. The next step I'm going to do in my workflow, I go ahead and replace these with the file. So I'll be doing texture maps. I want an external file. Okay, in this case, I'm going to use a texture that's a checkerboard. And the reason I want to do that is so that I can, the first texture I want on there, I want to be able to detect any overlap or distortion that's happening, and a checkerboard is the best way to do that. So as I go through and assign these maps the checkerboard texture, that's not what I want. File, find it. Let's see, that one. Alright, so all of these eventually are going to be checkerboard. Put those on there and be able to map that to find any distortion on those. Okay, let's take a look at our texture map, and we can see that it's not mapped yet. It's just on there, the default. So what we're going to try first is right up here. Let's just get rid of this for now. Your projection mapping tools are right up here under Create UVs. You have planar mapping, which is just a simple plane that you can see the gizmo here. So that's not going to work for our model very well. We have cylindrical mapping that gives us an additional, a different kind of a mapping technique. So you have control over the gizmo, so you can actually control how much of the cylinder you use to project, but that's not quite what we need either. Let's try automatic mapping. Check our settings, and here you have control over how many planes that you choose to map with. So you can set that to various numbers. We'll try 6. And let's see, you can optimize for less distortion or fewer pieces. I usually opt for fewer pieces because I don't like spending the time to sew it or stitch it up. And insert projection before deformers. It's usually checked by default, so I just leave it. So let's try that projection method. And you can't really see this very well, so I'm just going to turn off the map here so that you can see that a little bit better. But it actually takes our pieces of the geometry of that body of that car and lays them out pretty well. But you can see that there's going to be plenty of sewing left to do. So quick methods of sewing that you can employ are selecting the sides of those meshes, and when you select that you can see where those actually meet up. So if I were to select along these edges and then say move and sew is one that I use quite a bit. So if I depress that, you can see that it took all of these UVs and stitched them to the back of that vehicle, making it very easy. It doesn't tweak it out of it doesn't distort it as it does it. It simply sews those edges together. Let's see, so we can go through here, and really what this projection method does is lay out the pieces of the vehicle so you can work on stitching them back together. And that's what you'll be doing a lot of, is moving, sewing, and cutting and pasting and sewing them back together. So as I work through here, what I'm going to do is try to sew up what makes sense, keeping as many of the sides together as possible. You can see that these edges are in the front of the vehicle, and so I don't see if those are highlighted, so but those will be. So if I highlight across the front of these edges, then I can see that that is selected, and when I click move and sew, and yes, they are stitched together. Now this doesn't make sense as much, so what I might do is go ahead and deselect, and that's holding my control key down, deselecting that area, and then sew it together. And I may end up actually cutting these edges apart off of the top of that, or trying to stitch these together in a way that makes a little bit more sense. Let's see what happens if we can select those. You can see that those edges are along here. So let's also try to select these edges along here. Oops. My option, or my shift key down, and selecting along those areas and picking up more of these points to sew. And this one is also included, I believe. So knowing that these actually wrap around the front of the vehicle, I'm just going to go ahead and stitch this, move and sew, to see what I get. And you can see I'm getting some bunching here, and that's what we want to avoid. We want to make sure that we have no overlapping verts, and this is causing a problem that's not going to have a desirable result there. As you can see, it's bunching up there. So I'm going to undo that and find a different solution for that. I may just, let's see, deselect these along here and see what I get by doing that. Okay, that's a little bit better result. But regardless, I have some edges up here that are quite small, are quite narrow, and I want to make sure to maintain the proportion of those. But as we move through here, I want to be conscious of making sure that there is no overlapping vertices. Alright, so let's try to sew. Actually, this side of the vehicle does not exist yet, as you can see, which I'll need to go back and do. But for the sake of getting this out as quickly as possible, I'm going to just do this portion of the vehicle. Alright, so I'm wondering, another selection method that I use quite frequently is if I select UVs and then control and right click and I say to shell, that'll pick up the entire thing, and push W on my keyboard, and that'll move it out of the way. So you can do that very quickly, move pieces out of the way that you're trying to clear a spot to work here. So there's a couple of tools that you can use. Let's see, what else can I tell you? There are rotate keys up here. Go ahead and work your way through here and just explore and test these different options. This particular unfold selected UVs is commonly used when doing an organic model. So you might test that if you're doing something like an arm. We project or project a cylinder on the arm, and sometimes that can work out really well. When you're projecting cylinders on arms and legs, you want to make sure to rotate that gizmo so that the seam is in the back, and that'll save you a lot of work, because you want to hide the seams as much as possible, especially if you're doing organic characters, because when you jump to Mudbox or ZBrush and do your high level work there, the seams are actually going to be visible when you create your normal maps and apply those back to your low res. So you want to be really conscious of that. Bury the seams underneath the clothing line So you want to avoid seams in the front and sides of the neck. Put the seam in the back if you can do that. Just as you would hide triangles around the back of the ears, you want to hide your seams as well.